Ash, you're asking a creative person this.
I was about to say the same thing.
That's a good question, and that's...
Let's go. Okay, so we've got Justin Maguire. Do you get this joke about Jerry Maguire and Justin Maguire? And
show me the money. Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do. Although he was Jerry Maguire, I'm Justin Maguire.
Right.
But the amount of people that do that, in the end, you go with it. I quite like show me the money anyway. So
right, I find the name exceptional.
Thanks.
So we've got Justin Maguire, the founder and Dubai CEO of MCG Talent, which is quite an exceptional company in the region that specializes in recruiting for the Marcom industry, which I find to be exceptional. It's find a company that specializes in a niche. That's something that in the region isn't quite popular. Usually companies, they like to be generalists. And that's all over the board, across the board in many, many industries. So I'm going to take your, hear your take on that. And we're going to talk a little bit about your company, about your partner, how you guys start this business. What do you find in the region to be kind of different? We're going to go through all of this. What kind of advice you'd have for job seekers? So yeah, let's start with that. How did you guys come to shape the company? How did you guys meet? What happened?
Well, I ended up coming to Dubai in 2008, actually, and I was I worked in. To give you sort of a bit more context, I worked in the creative and advertising world for 7 years, and then I moved to Central America and decided to become an English teacher in Honduras for a year. I decided to do kind of one of those gap years, but in the middle of a work year, simply because I left advertising. And to be honest with you, I was a little bit disillusioned with the agency world. I'd risen through the ranks quite quickly there. Felt I sort of hit a ceiling and didn't really know what else to do in my career. And maybe I had an early midlife crisis. I'm not too sure, but decided that Honduras was a place I was going to go. Don't ask me why. I probably should have done a bit more investigation on the country, because it turns out it was, I think it had the second largest merger rate in the world. But I moved there just to talk kids English and had a lovely time there. And when I came back, I just didn't fancy going back into the advertising world, but a lot of the because I'd worked in digital marketing in the early to mid 2000s, that was quite a new industry then. I couldn't really find a recruiter that understood what I did, and I was looking to try and get into a client side role, which is quite typical from ad agencies, that you tend to go to client, and I just couldn't find someone that understood what I did. And as that process evolved with a recruiter, I realized that there was an opportunity in the UK to set up a niche business, just looking for creative people like myself that wanted to find a job. That went very well, and that business grew very quickly in the UK. But the recession of 2008 took quite a big, hefty blow to the business I was part of in the UK. And lo and behold, from nowhere, a headhunter headhunted a headhunter. That was me, and offered me a job in Dubai. And I actually hadn't considered moving to the region before, but the more I investigated Dubai, and at the time it was, talking about the palm, and it was the land of forever moving cranes. And, my office was near Lehman Brothers, where people were, coming outside with cardboard boxes, and the bank was closing. I thought, well, this isn't the right place to be. It sounds like the place with forever moving cranes is the place to be. Right. So moved over to Dubai in September of 2008, and aside from being hit with a wall of heat, which I wasn't quite expecting when I came out of the air, I just fell quickly, to be honest with you. I loved how dynamic the city was. I love the entrepreneurialism. I love the spirit. I loved the sheer ambition that the UAE had. And it sat very well with my character and I guess my hopes, dreams and ambitions that I had for my career. That's the good stuff. The bad stuff is the job I came to do in Dubai was unfortunately connected to a lot of the construction that got put on hold. So I managed to lose my job quite quickly within arrival, not long after arriving here. But it didn't put me off. And rather than pursue another job, actually, it ignited the entrepreneurial flame underneath me. And by that time, I was, by the time I got around to setting up the business we have now, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And I decided, what else did I have to lose? I had 10 years of work experience. I'd lived in Europe. I'd lived in Latin America. I was now living in the Middle East. I had a really great set of contacts within the Marcoms world. And I'd worked with some great players. And I was effectively the first niche specialist talent provider in the region. So, you know, I was a big fish in a small pond. Let's call it that. And so I was able to establish the brand of our business and capitalize on that opportunity very quickly. And our business, you know, after Dubai obviously had a bad time during the financial crisis, but Abu Dhabi, you know, came to put the cape on and came to its rescue. Mm-hmm. And actually, I was here to reap all the benefits of a growing region. And of course, the oil price at the time was quite high. So we could, you know, the jobs market was quite buoyant. My problem was I didn't have much talent here at the time because I was very focused within digital, and digital was still an emerging market here.
Correct. And to kind of choose a niche is a very strategic position. Did you do this on purpose?
Of course. So obviously I'd worked within the industry, right? So I would advise anyone, what's your unfair advantage in business? Okay. And my unfair advantage was I'd worked for 7 years in the industry. I'd recruited in that world in the UK. I'd spent a year in the Middle East before setting up. So my unfair advantage was I could sit in front of any business and essentially, if they were to tell me what they needed, I'd sat the other side of the fence. I'd done that job. I'd sat with them. And that I felt would give me a competitive edge over anyone else. And it did. It did. So I was able to scale the business on the back of having that unfair advantage.
Do you think that you've obviously you were just explaining now, you've practiced the profession itself. You were an agent, you worked in an agency. Do you think as a recruiter or a headhunter, you think it's important to kind of experience the job itself? Because I find, and I'm generalizing here, but I find recruiters to just be recruiters. I mean, they kind of, many recruiters I've seen over on LinkedIn, I look at their profiles and they don't seem to kind of pass through the job itself. And I think it makes a big difference. What do you think? I mean, it obviously gave you an advantage. I mean, that's for sure.
You're preaching to the converted here. For me, I think if you're going to be a successful recruiter, you have to be a specialist. I think the days of the generalist, you know, in the 1980s, the big, you know, the Michael Pages, the Robert Walters, the Hayes of this world, the big players in the recruitment industry. In those days, they were at the forefront when recruitment agencies were new. Okay, well, that's a long time ago. If you're going to be successful in the recruitment industry, you need to be passionate about what you recruit in, and you need to be an absolute expert within that niche field. You know, inch wide, mile deep, as my chairman of my business says, and he's completely right. You know, you need to be an absolute expert within your field. And to be honest with you, I think we win business on the basis that we are experts within those fields. If you want the reassurance that the person you're dealing with knows all the shakers and movers and understands the job that you've done and is interconnected into that world. And I've always been very passionate about that. And that has been our unique selling point. My business partner is an ex-designer that turned into a recruiter, and I'm an ex-content marketing guy that got into a recruitment. And that has been the ethos of our business. And even if we've hired people that haven't come from that world, we've brought them in at a junior stage and we train them up in our way. So they have our DNA, and we make sure that they are passionate about what we do and the sectors that we recruit in. And if they aren't, and if they don't want to be passionate about it and they don't want to deep dive into it, it inevitably doesn't normally work out with us.
That, you know, that's music to my ears. I love that. Do you what kind of advice would you give to aspiring headhunters or recruiters?
Aspiring headhunters. So I'm obviously a recruiter of aspiring headhunters. So what I tend to look for people that are at the entry stage of their career is, I think recruitment really, you have to be honest. First of all, there is a sales element to the job, but there's a sales element to pretty much every job, be it in PR, something, sales skills are probably the most critical skills you can have. Okay.
Absolutely.
Be it selling yourself, be it in an interview process or selling into a journalist, if you're a PR consultant, etc. Sales skills are fantastic skills to have. So I think you need to be consultative and intelligent. And passionate about what you do. So those things I always look for. The other thing I always look for in people, and perhaps this probably goes back to my story a bit, is I look for people who have a point to prove in life, who actually have got something. They have a real ambition to better themselves. They have a real ambition, an absolute hunger, but also come from a background perhaps where they weren't spoon-fed. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. But because I think the recruitment industry it can actually, if you're really good at it, can really fast track your career and really give you an opportunity to earn very well and to develop any entrepreneurial flair that you've got. And I just take me as an example from that, and other people that I've employed. If you are genuinely passionate, hungry, ambitious, have got a go, you're in. This is a business where what you put in is what you get out. Okay, and that. It's completely. You can see all the metrics that I have, all the KPIs that I tell people. If you achieve X, Y, and Z, and I have a formula in recruitment. If you do that, what comes out the other end will make you successful. And people get that very quick when they're young, and they can change their lives. And I've employed people who've phenomenally changed their lives very quickly. So aspiring headhunters need to be intelligent, articulate, passionate about the sector, and have very good sales skills, and have a burning ambition to succeed.
Awesome. Your MCG specializes in marketing, creative, and communication, and of course, digital, and and technology.
Digital, of course, runs through everything that we do. But yeah, that's our USP. That's our unique selling point. That is what we are known for. That is what when I opened up the business in Dubai, it was on the back of my previous experience.
Right.
And so, I picked up lots of business because people knew that I'd come from that world, and that has remained to be our USP.
And at the moment, I'll just ask you a general question now. At the moment in the region, do you think marketing jobs or marcom jobs are in demand? Are they in high demand?
Yeah, so let me break it down to you, the four areas, our four foundational pillars that we recruit for. So we recruit for agencies, okay? So be those public relations, advertising, digital, creative, brand strategy, different types of agencies within the marketing ecosystem. Then we recruit for consultancies, be those management consultancies, boutique, niche providers in that space, be those advisory firms that advise governments on how to communicate in a particular way. So consultancies are slightly different to agencies in the sense that they are normally embedded within a business. Okay, they sit within inside the inner workings of a business.
Right.
We recruit for corporates, semi-government, and government entities, and I think that kind of sets, it explains what it is. But to give you an example, the likes of like a Majid Al Futtaim and Emirates, a Dubai Tourism. Those types of businesses that we would work for. Okay,
and you cover Riyadh as well, in many different locations.
Yeah, so Saudi Tourism Authority, exactly. Yeah, and I'll move on to Saudi in a second, actually. And then the final pillar of our business, where our clients come from, is technology. Now, that could be fast growth startups, that could be developed technology companies, that could be venture capital firms within that space, but businesses in the technology ecosystem that are growing within the Middle East and North Africa. Now, we also replicate everything I've just said into Asia as well, because we have an office in Hong Kong and we have another office in Singapore. And the newest kid on the block within our business, if I want to call it that, is Riyadh, where we've seen exponential growth into Saudi. Now, Dubai for us typically covered MENA, with the bulk of our business coming from the GCC. But I did an audit of our revenue last year, and it looked about 60% of our revenue was connected in some way, shape, or form to Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it made complete logical sense to pursue a license in Saudi Arabia, which we've moved forward with this year. And yeah, we have a license to trade now in Saudi Arabia as well.
Awesome. Is it easy for professionals to move from, let's say, Saudi, and I'm talking expats and Saudi locals as well, to move from Saudi to Singapore, for example?
Yes, the Saudi to Singapore is a little bit of a harder move. Now, let me explain. Having lived in Singapore for 4 years, I can sort of give you the nuances about Singapore. Singapore is, Dubai. Let's compare Dubai to Singapore, and then actually I'll talk about the similarities between Singapore and Saudi. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the clear difference between Dubai and Singapore is Dubai is built on, I think, on a build it and they will come philosophy. Okay, the simple fact of the matter is the ambitions of Dubai, the ambitions of the UAE can't meet the population that it currently has. So there is a lot of influx of great talent that come to this part of the world. And help build and grow businesses, okay, with looking after the local workforce as well. But actually, there is a policy here that attracts the best talent. Saudi is a slightly different kettle of fish in the sense that it has a very young workforce that want to get into the private sector. The population is there to sustain the amount of people that it has. The education system is getting better and better, and there's lots of new graduates coming onto the market, and so growing a business in Saudi will be very focused towards Saudi nationals, okay, as it should be. That is very similar in Singapore, okay. Singapore, they have, I think, the blueprint for what Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, Doha, for example, what they're looking at. I think Singapore wrote the first script, okay. It brought in some great talent to Singapore. But what's happened since that time is that the population of Singapore, as the country became more wealthy, is that they're now very well educated. There is a fantastic pool of local talent in Singapore. So if you want to grow a business in Singapore, the nucleus of that has to be Singaporean talent. Same in Saudi. So going back to your original question, if you wanted to move from Saudi to Singapore, yes, you could. But you'd have to be probably very senior, because they only really let in the top tier of level of salaried individuals now. And secondly, would have to be a skill set that probably is lacking from Singaporean talent.
And that's something that's probably rare, right?
Well, actually, it depends in the marcoms and digital world. It depends. If it's a very standard, generalized advertising person, then actually, there's plenty there. But if it's a creative with a specialized skill set, if it's someone who wants to work in the technology space with a specialist skill set, if it's someone that's grown or built a larger type of digital strategy business, for example, then chances are there'll be an opportunity for you in Singapore. It's just that they have a very well educated local workforce.
Correct.
Singapore is the hub for the Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, and to a degree the Asia Pacific region, and that is what Riyadh and Dubai will be battling over soon, in my opinion, to be the same in MENA.
Right. Do you think that there's a global trend of nationalization?
Yes, very much so, very much so. And I think you can just see that playing out now across the world. I think, but where the UAE has been very clever is that they've seen there's an opportunity now for some of the greatest minds to come here because of this, right? So since COVID, ever since COVID happened, the UAE I was living in Singapore when COVID-19 sort of lockdowns kicked in, and to a degree I was experiencing what it was like in Singapore, and I was experiencing what it was like in Asia Pacific, which was reacting very differently to the Middle East. There, they were locking everything down. In the Middle East, they were attracting people to come. They were offering work from anywhere visas, and it really opened people's eyes to the Middle East.
Awesome. I'm going to move now to specifics on agency professionals and in-house marketing teams. There are differences between agency jobs and in-house jobs. Is it a plus having experienced both? Is this something that you look for in job seekers?
Well, it's obviously down to what our clients want. I think one thing I've found, having come from the UK market, let's call it a more developed market for the sake of it, all right? There, you see a lot of flow that people go between client side and agency side. There is actually quite a lot, people tend to go backwards and forwards quite a bit. You don't really see that so much in the Middle East, okay? It's quite set in its ways. Typically you're either an agency person up to a certain point, and then you go to client, and then you're a client person. But that doesn't happen as often as people think, okay?
Correct.
So you'll find that people tend to sit in two camps. Now, which I think is a real shame from a diversity perspective. I think it's a real shame from a culture perspective. I think that agency people can bring some amazing ideas to the table. And I think everything here used to typically be segregated. So if you're a media person, well, you stay in media agencies. If you're an creative person, you stay there.
Yeah.
And if you're a client side person, well, that's your camp there. Slowly are we seeing that integration happen? Okay. And some clients are bringing in an in-housing model. So some of the big family holding groups are bringing in that in-house. They're pulling their rather than using agencies, they're actually pulling resources in-house. But in the same time, we're also seeing some other family groups or big corporates doing the complete opposite.
Correct.
and moving all their in-house teams to agency. So I still think there's a long way to go on that point you've made. I think it still has quite a traditional mindset in that space, this region. But I think the technology companies, and they have slowed down a bit this year because of the well-known squeeze on venture capital funding. But actually, the technology companies were starting to break that trend because they were hiring agency professionals like nobody's business, right? And they were putting them inside, and then they had a really dynamic, young and experienced workforce, exactly like Manchester United, like those pictures that you've got behind you. Yeah, what was Alex Ferguson great at? He was great at building a team that had a mixture of experience and youth. Okay,
absolutely,
a mixture of different backgrounds. And I think the technology companies actually, some of them really got that right, and they were the first to make that bold move into that market. A lot of the agencies and corporates that we work with still had quite an old-fashioned mindset.
Do you a lot of jobs, and I see a lot of job posts focused on the tactical aspect of the job. I don't see strategic jobs anymore. This job of the strategic planner, is it going extinct? Is it why is this happening? Did you notice this as well?
Actually, planning is an interesting one, because planning is actually where I see we still get quite a lot of demand for. I think planners are starting to become their weight in gold. Where I'm seeing a lot of CVs coming from right now, is the let's call it the old school marketeer. So the integrated sort of in-house CMO. Those days, if you've not jumped on the digital bandwagon, or if you've not had a significant amount of digital experience within your career, those old school CMOs, those fatty layers that businesses have, they're starting to get taken off. In agencies, I'm afraid to say we're seeing quite a number of business directors and account directors, senior account directors, client servicing directors. That level has taken a bit of a hit, because, well, I remember Martin Sorrell, when he was even at WPP, he said, "Why clients they want to pay for creative and strategy, they don't want to pay for overpriced client servicing or business directors. They don't seem to add much," right? Well, that area, if you're not at the heart of digital, if you're not heart of technology, if you've not got something fresh to bring to the table, we're seeing a lot of those people get pushed to one side right now.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I do consulting for creative agencies and in-house teams. I do operations management consulting. I design the workflows and I implement software, working with Jig, and it's an industry-specific software. And I do a business transformation kind of program for agencies and in-house teams. Project management is a big thing when you come to manage an operation for an agency or in-house, especially when you've got big budgets, and you've got communication activities going on, on a regular basis. You need that project management. So what I do sometimes, along with the owner of the agency, is that we assign this function, project management, to account management. If they can't afford to have a team of project managers, then that skill is assigned to account managers. So I think account managers are pretty important. I mean, they in that sense. I mean,
I don't think anyone's saying they're not important.
Right.
I think what we're saying, client servicing, account management is critical. I mean, I would say looking after your clients and making sure they're wrapped in cotton wool is absolutely imperative. I think the skill sets that those individuals have is the bit that I'm focused in on, and also I think the sheer number that some businesses have. When they look at their team sheet and they go, where are we making money? Where are we losing money? Okay, that team seems to be the area that people have their eyes on right now. Okay, so my recommendation is that if you work in account management, then don't sit too pretty. Don't become less hands-on, because it's those that are at 1 or 2 steps away from the client that are overseeing, but not really involved in the business. That's the layer that is getting removed now. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Yes, I understand. I understand, and that's for financial reasons, or trying to.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, if you look at the middle, my dear friend Hubert Boulos, who runs DDB, I think he did an article recently where he was talking literally about, in the Middle East, one of the toughest parts of running an agency right now is actually the transactional nature of it. It's the fact that digital has obviously driven the price down, and the clients are super transactional. Clients are putting agencies up for pitch. It's never ending. And I by the way, I also have a business in Asia and I worked in the UK, as I said. The people pitch here more than anywhere else. The Middle East.
Yeah.
Everyone and it's so transactional. And I know I'm a service business owner as well. So our rates in the Middle East we are constantly challenged at our rates where we never are in Asia. Okay. Everyone wants a lot of things for not a lot of money in the Middle East.
For free.
Yeah. And then don't get me started on getting paid, because that's a whole other story. But it's the nature of the beast in this part of the world, I found since having the business. Yeah.
Right. Is it difficult for professionals to switch between B2B and B2C marketing? And is it something that you look for?
Yeah, look, I think you need to go back to what you asked me, and you said why did I niche out? What was I interested in? And I think you're talking about two very different from an account management perspective. Look, you're looking after clients. It's quite, you can switch between the two, but actually, I think if you were a creative in that space, if you're a strategist in that space, that's a really nice niche to be in. If you're a marketeer within that space, you have the ability to niche out in that area. And I think customers, be those consumers or corporates, buy into that, right? So I think if your niche is B2B, stick within it, because there's an opportunity to capitalize on that.
So that diversity, it's not something that you would recommend.
Well, it's not something I think you're talking about, like, if you are used to working very closely with SMEs, or if you're selling into corporates, or if you're working on a SaaS subscription model system, it's quite a different thing to selling cans of Pepsi Cola, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that's quite hard to show correlation with.
I agree. That's well said. We see a lot of those memes on LinkedIn talking about fresh grads having difficulty finding jobs, and these jobs posts come out asking for 3 years of experience, 5 years of experience, and doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and they don't have any experience. So what kind of advice would you give to fresh grads? Do they look for internships that work for free, or how do they start?
Yeah, I think, look, it's very interesting. So from a recruiter's perspective, let me just tell you one of the things that you've in the Middle East, particularly in the UAE and Saudi and Qatar and some of the GCC countries, It's a hyper competitive job market. Okay. If we put a job post up, and I'll give you a comparison, we put a job post up in Hong Kong. We can have that post up for 2 weeks and probably get around 200 applicants if it's a really good ad, right? We can have a job advert, the same job advert up in Dubai, and we can have 1,200 applicants within 48 hours. Okay. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
That's, and in London, it is actually not far off the same metrics that we've got in Hong Kong. Okay. So there is a lot of people that want to work in Dubai and the GCC, let's call it that, right?
Yep.
So how can you get noticed? Well, for a start, I think what I'm trying to say is just applying for a job isn't the way of getting noticed. Okay. You need to, yes, apply, but you also need to find out who's advertising for the job. You need to find out who the recruiter is, who the hiring manager is, who the company is. You need to individualize and personalize your submission. I'll give you another example from me. I must get, at the moment, I'm sitting on 3,700 connect requests that I haven't got around to yet. Not because I'm rude, because I just don't, the sheer volume that comes through is unreal, right? When I do go through it, I go through my connection requests, and I would say 9 out of 10 don't send me a note. Okay. What I mean by a note is, hi Justin, noticed you're doing this. The ones that have written me a note, the ones that have read my profile, the ones that someone said, oh, hi Justin, I couldn't believe it. I saw you spent a year in Honduras. How was that? Right. So I'm scanning through these invitation requests. Guess which one I stop at? You know which one I stop at. I stop at the one which took the time to read my profile, which took the time to personalize their invite. Same can be said for a CV and a submission. Okay. If you want to get noticed, you have to pull your head above the pulpit, and you have to do something that's tailored and individual that's going to make you stand out. Okay. Otherwise, you could get lost in the mix of people that come through. And you could be a great candidate. It's a real shame. You could be a great candidate, but the ones that get noticed are the ones that dare to do different.
I agree. The notion that someone has to be fluent in English, and that fluency automatically translates to proficiency. But I tell you the truth, I've met a lot of people who are fluent in English, and honestly, they were morons. I mean, it's just that it doesn't really automatically translate to proficiency. It's I've met people whose English was kind of mediocre, but they were really good at what they did. Yeah. What's your take on that? Do your clients look for fluency in English, and why? Why is it that?
Well, look, I think that the point you just made really does depend on the job that's being advertised. Okay. Now, in my world, like the Marcom's world, English, if Dubai business is done predominantly in English. Okay. Bilingual is a fantastic thing to have. And if you've got Arabic and writing skills as well as English writing skills, well, that's a big thumbs up as well. But most of the jobs that we work in, because there's a communication element to it, they need to be pretty good at English. Okay. Same in Singapore. Now, go and speak to my colleagues that work in Hong Kong, switch Arabic for Mandarin, and there's or Cantonese. And most of the jobs that we have there are very specific to that, to have requiring Mandarin and Cantonese. In Dubai and in Saudi right now, the great majority of the jobs that get posted, the reality is you need to be bilingual. Okay.
Even in Saudi.
Yeah, in Saudi as well. For the ones that we work in, yeah. So my recommendation to your audience would be, if your English isn't 100%, invest time into a course where you can make it 100%, because there will be people ahead of you in the pile that can speak English better or write English better.
What about countries of North Africa? Do you focus on them? I mean, I've noticed a lot of highly skilled candidates from the west of North Africa, like Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. Yeah. These guys are sharp, man. I mean, they're sharp.
Yeah, we placed 2 people from Morocco last month into Dubai.
Awesome.
Coming from management consultancies. So yeah, I think you're right. I think Morocco, Tunisia were perhaps countries that were overlooked a few years ago, but I think there is some great talent there. I continue to believe that bringing in great talent from North Africa, the Levant region, into the GCC is something that we should be really focused on, because there is just a cultural level of understanding. There's obviously the language capabilities that candidates from Europe, North America, Australia, etc. don't have. And I think it's a real, I think it's a great place for people to come to change their lives. So
absolutely.
and it's quite often a very young and all those things that I said that I look for in recruiters. I see a lot of that I employed a Moroccan girl earlier this year. Now she didn't get to stay with us for personal reasons, but I think there's some great talent coming from that part of the world.
Correct. I'm going to go back to project management. Is it a trend now that that there's project management growing in the marketing realm? Yeah,
I would say so, particularly within digital. Digital project management is actually quite a high demand skill, and that's from an organization technological perspective, I think there's a real demand for that. I think more so within agencies and consultancies, to be honest with you. I think, but that's actually become, and that's sort of, there's project management from an internal, traffic organizational perspective, and there's project management from an external flow perspective as well. And both we're seeing are in demand.
Awesome. AI.
Yes.
AI. Where do you think this is taking us? If of course, what's going on with ChatGPT and all that. If do you look for someone who's good at using that? That's a really good engineering at the moment. Yeah.
I think I think at the moment with AI, there's a lot of talk. Is it? But let's take the talk to one side. Right now, talking about the here and now in July, soon to be August 2023, there's not a lot of change in the job market from it. It is assisting people. ChatGPT. What we're seeing now is some beautifully crafted cold email approaches, some LinkedIn statuses from people that used to be riddled with spelling mistakes and now give us these glorious emoji filled statuses that so obviously are AI driven, but of course they would never admit it. So that's what we're seeing right now. But I think if we have to have this chat in a year's time, we'll be having a very different conversation. I think the pace of growth in that space is going to be phenomenal. I think it has the potential to be as much of a game changer as the internet did. I think there is no getting away from AI. In advertising, obviously, copywriting is an area that people are obviously quite, copywriters are obviously quite nervous about. And I think it's got the ability to disrupt every part of the creative sector. What you're probably going to see, and in the recruitment industry as well, by the way, and we could go on and on about different sectors. What you're going to see in the jobs market, here's my prediction, is that first thing you're going to see is jobs opening up for people that know how to use AI tools. That's going to be the first wave of introduction we're going to see. The second wave will be the more disruptive phase. And that will be where AI will start taking over people's jobs. And it will be disruptive. So the jobs that we fill right now and the jobs that our clients have right now, there will be machines most likely doing some of those jobs. Will new jobs open up from that? Well, I think so, but there will probably be expert operators of those tools. And that is the big change that's coming ahead. Will businesses need, if you're a recruitment business, are you deemed, at the moment, you're deemed a successful recruitment business if you've got like 50, 60, 100 people, right? Well, I don't think the amount of bums you've got on seats is going to determine what sort of successful business you're going to be in the future, because a smart business is going to be one that knows how to be agile and use its tools and technology and maximizes its profit from it. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of commercial office space, I think, being freed up not so much in the MENA industry. But if you look at markets like London, New York, I mean, when I go, I couldn't believe it when I went back. I flew into London earlier this year, and on a Friday. Now I, lived and worked in east part of London for quite some time, and it was like a ghost town. I couldn't get over it. What was Friday lunchtime buzz the city alive was, it was tourists and no workers.
Is that Ealing, or is it Ealing is on the other side?
No, so this is like Liverpool Street, Farringdon, Shoreditch, all around there. So that's the bit that's gone hyper trendy now, where I look like the old guy. And I used to be the young cool kid on the block. I went there now, and I was quite the opposite. But no, that
you look great. You look great. Don't
thank you. Flattery gets everywhere. No, I think that's where you're going to see a lot of office space freed up from hybrid work, and that's again that thing that's COVID done. But AI will also disrupt the jobs market, and I just think businesses will probably need fewer people.
Correct. But what about those who utilize? You were talking about that. I'll just go back a little bit. The ChatGPT and writing up those beautiful cover letters. Yeah. But how do you vet them out? How do they, once they're hired, they're going to find out, hey, you're not the same person?
Well, they'll probably carry on using AI, won't they?
All right. Good answer. I was waiting for that.
Yeah. Look, I think.
So now it's about how you use chat.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see. I think the jobs market, the first jobs we're going to start seeing open, and to a degree we are, is people that understand how to use AI. So that's going to fall into CTOs, CIOs' agendas first of all, and then you know what I mean by that, chief technology officers and chief information officers, and then from that you're going to see it pass through businesses. I think. Operators, and let's call it that in speech marks, of AI, they're going to be the job opportunities we're going to be seeing opening up, and then we shall see what happens to some of the, as I said to you, the ones that I look on our job order list that we place right now, and I will there be a market for copywriters? Well, yeah, I think there will, but not everyone's going to want one. Right, some people will acknowledge and respect the skill that individuals have in copywriting, but others just want something done fast and cheap, right?
Correct.
And that used to be driven by humans. Now people will be quite happy for that to be driven by a machine, and that will happen.
I agree. Do you have any book recommendations for young Marcom professionals?
Oh my gosh! Well, you've got to if you're in Marcoms and you haven't read David Ogilvy's book, then you're in the wrong world. Okay. That's the one that I first read. So forgive my middle-aged mind for forgetting the exact title, but let me try and see if I can remember that. It's Confessions of an Ad Man. There you go, by David Ogilvy. I would recommend anyone that wants to be in the creative industry to have a read of that. And he was the king of Madison Avenue. And much of what he said then is very relevant today. Now, for the entrepreneurs amongst you, there's lots of, lots of books I would go to, but the one that really sort of inspired me and got me probably into wanting to run my own business, and it's an oldie, but it's a goldie, and that is Rich Dad Poor Dad. Okay, and
I know that one.
I definitely get that on your reading list as well.
Awesome. Could you little game over here? Could you rank the following attributes according to importance, please? When you look, what do you look for in a job seeker? Strategic knowledge, project management, tactical knowledge, attitude, and experience.
And do I have to put them in an order?
No, just according to importance. What's most important?
For me, okay, my mantra in our business is higher attitude, trained skill. So where do you think I'm going to go with that? You
need to translate for me.
Yeah. So attitude is at for me is at the heart of everything. Everything you've just mentioned there is something you can train. But if someone got a bad attitude, you can't work with them.
I agree. Very well said. Last bit now, we're going to go to operations. How do you know if someone's good on process? Because and forgive me here, but the region is kind of weak on process operations. I'm talking local operations. I'm talking local agencies and local marcom departments. Process and operations are things that people don't really pay attention to. I'm generalizing, of course, but I've noticed this a lot. I used to work in multinationals and I worked in local companies. Operations is a big issue. When you come and recruit someone, how do you find out whether they're good at operations or not? Well, and is it important?
I think there's different ways of looking at it here. So I think I'm going to answer your question two ways, if that's all right with you. Because I look at it, first of all, in companies that I want to work with, and then people I want to recruit. So for me, a telltale sign of the experience we're going to have with a company is how our interactions are with their human resources department. Because if they're terrible, their finance department are often aligned to that. That means that the candidate will get a poor experience. People don't show up for interviews. People run late. People, it's one of the unfortunate things you get in this part of the world, which is getting better, I must add. But it also means getting paid at the other end is going to be a nightmare because the professionalism that you experience in the operational aspect of the business just isn't up to speed, and that gives off people forget what a terrible first impression that can give for people. Now, if you're a candidate, that also gives you a terrible first impression of the business. If the HR person that you're dealing with isn't slick, professional, on time, has a job description, has all those things that you need. From a personality perspective, of the type of people that you want to hire, well, look, it depends on the job, right? So if we're recruiting for someone where their organizational skills are absolutely at the be all and end all of what they have to do, or the job that they need, be it in finance, HR, or be it in let's say executive assistant for someone, so an operational role, which we don't really, that's not our core focus, but we do recruit for that within our ecosystem sometimes. You've just got to drill those skills down in our pre-screen interview. You've got to find out how organized that individual is, what their track record is. And ultimately, when you're recruiting, and now be it for junior people, experienced people, very senior people, you've got to take references. This is something in this part of the world that I think people forget. People trust someone. People will go, so you work there. How was it? And they do little background check. And I always find you in Dubai, especially, I'm one person removed from someone that knows someone, right? So I can find out if you've been, if you've done something in a role and you've not come clean about it, you've been a bit dishonest. Well, I can tend to find out what's happened there, because you're one person away from finding out the truth. So always take references on individuals as well. But I think if it's someone that needs organizational skill sets, you've got to make sure your pre-screen interviews cover those points.
Right. I agree. I'm going to share your all the details of MCG Talent, of course. I've noticed on the website that you that the website is kind of different from other recruiting companies. You don't have like a link where people just upload resumes. You have specific job posts. And then
yes, we have
can apply
job posts. Yeah. And that's because we want people to apply if they feel they're relevant, to have read the job description. Otherwise, you just get a huge volume of people that come through. So we want people to have read the job description and decided that job's relevant for them.
Awesome. I can't thank you enough. It's been an amazing conversation. I enjoyed it very much. I hope we do it again. You've been very generous giving us your time. I can't thank you enough. So yeah, we're
My
done.
pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. All right now. All the best.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.